Hello, everyone. During our time together today, we're going to pull back the curtain a little bit on how our friends at Box Butte have transformed what we kind of talked about in our prep sessions as a check the box type of program that was really solely focused on physical health, had some low engagement, but now a program that yields over 70% engagement, and which is honestly significantly higher than what we see in our book of business. So kudos there. So excited to have Dan and Peggy join us. But before we get into introductions, just wanted to give you a little bit of what you can expect from the conversation today and what we hope to achieve. So again, we're going to talk about this evolution of legacy where we're going to discuss how Box Butte really, again, reevaluated their goals from a 30-year-old program to something that they are today and moving that into who they want to be in the future. We're going to also talk about a holistic framework where we're going to explore the 5 elements of well-being that focus on career, social, financial, physical, and community, and how those pillars are really rooted in the Gallup research, but also how they show up inside the program and how they're utilized. We're also going to do a little bit of the secret sauce of how to achieve 100% engagement. And no joke, these are some stats that are showing up within this program. So really cool to be able to dig in and how some of their quarterly incentive structure helps drive that. We're also going to talk and highlight Peggy's role really in the power of internal coaching and what a holistic version of coaching can really look like. I have come to know this as the Peggy effect as we've gotten to talk about the program and how we're building this out. So going to be a really cool opportunity for Peggy to kind of share what she's doing and how she's investing into each of the employees. And then ultimately proving value on a budget. All of us are facing budget constraints, budget conversations, being stewards of the dollars of our organization. So really talking about, what kind of challenging landscapes are out there and how Box Butte has worked through those. So whether you're looking to revitalize a stagnant program or you're just starting the journey, today's session, I hope is going to be able to provide some tangible lessons on how to build a people-first culture where well-being can really precede productivity and profitability, but really focus on the human element of what we can do and the impact we can drive. So with that said, Dan, Peggy, again, super appreciative that you're here today to share your story of Box Butte. Give the folks in the audience just a little bit of a background of the role you play, maybe how long you've been with the organization. And then Dan, I'll have you tee up just kind of the overview of Box Butte. So Peggy, if you wouldn't mind maybe going first.
Absolutely. Hello, everyone, and thank you so much, Jim. I am Peggy Hinman. I am the well-being coach for the staff here at Box Butte General Hospital, an amazing group of people. What a privilege it is to be their coach. The most important thing about me as a coach, I believe, are those 5 words that are under or next to my name. Those are my Clifton strengths, my top 5 Clifton strengths. Connectedness, positivity, learner, relator, developer. I use those every day as I help individuals as they're honoring their commitment to their thriving lifestyle and well-being. I'm a certified Clifton Strengths coach and a certified Tiny Habits coach. And I use the tools from those and several other certifications to assist people to do what they want to do in their lives.
Awesome. Dan.
Yeah, my name is Dan Newhoff. I've been with Box Butte General Hospital for 15 years, primarily in the employee wellness realm. But we also have organizational development, right? So Peggy and I are all things culture at Box Butte General Hospital. It doesn't just start or stop with well-being. We also work in employee engagement as well as customer service and patient satisfaction. So I'm kind of the behind the scenes. Peggy's out in front with our people, but we work very well together to just make sure that what we're providing here to our employees is the best thing that we can possibly do. And as we go through this, you'll find out we're constantly doing that throughout the program year. So I'm also as a certified Clifton strengths coach too. So you'll see kind of a theme as we get through this of that kind of being the base of all things that we do here.
And audience, those in attendance would love to know if you've ever done Clifton Strength Finder, or you're a huge advocate of that. Would love to see that in the chat, or maybe your pillars as well. Throw that in the chat. That would be fun. Dan, let's dig in. So again, almost 30 years, right, of having a well-being program. So would love to get a little bit into the background, and maybe the story here is really around, as you talked about, the kind of the progression, right? Where did this start? You've mentioned you've been involved for 15 years, so I'm sure you've seen some change, you've seen some evolution, no shortage of that, but give us a little bit of that background of how the program started and maybe its own evolution journey, and then maybe what it looks like in the future.
Yeah. And I think that people will probably resonate with this too, but I was not here when they first started the program, but I know the guy that was very well. So he was actually my first boss when I started, but self-insured programs, there's costs there. We're paying claims out, those type of things. So really, employee wellness programs with kind of that physical health kind of emphasis was to prevent healthcare costs, right? Try to mitigate that stuff as much as we can, get people in front of providers and do preventative screenings. And those type of approaches, as well as like the return on investment of some of those other things like absenteeism, presenteeism, PTO days, all the cost associated things were kind of the emphasis for programs. And it was here too. So that's kind of what launched it, is really evaluating what is our population health, how can we mitigate that, what is our cost associated with that, and really how do we have an impact with our employees and kind of mitigating some of those things. So that's kind of how it got started. I came on about 10 years after that, right? So there was a little bit of transition in that is because we didn't have a dedicated person for well-being. And my approach at that point in time was that the program can run itself. But if we're really going to move forward and have some success in our goal areas, we really need somebody designated to pay attention to those things so that we can guide ourselves moving forward. And that's really where the first kind of transition happened, was in year one when I was a wellness coordinator.
And Dan, maybe one of the things I remember we chatted about here again, maybe some of those early obstacles. You had mentioned again that the evolution of the program, where I think again, as we kind of coined it, that check the box, where engagement maybe was there or questionable, but people following through the program was something that you were really looking at. So maybe talk to the groups a little bit about like some of those obstacles that you faced in making some changes to the program. Because again, you had the foresight of those were the things that were needed in order to sustain that, but maybe talk to us a little bit about what those obstacles looked like and how you overcame them.
Yeah. So when you have goals that are cost related and then you're not having success, when you're looking back at that, it's obvious to see, there's something kind of missing here. During my 15 years, we changed the incentive structure 4 times to try to get some of that stuff. The most recent change being 5 years ago when Peggy joined us. But really the problem is that we have this structure, we have this program, but we're not getting the results that we want, right? So how do we do that? How can we look at our incentive structure? How can we look at our program structure? How can we look at additional staff and resources? Because even with one person, which seems like a lot, I know some organizations don't have anyone, it's still hard to do, right? There has to be a lot of eyes on it really to get some of those outcomes that you're pushing for. And I think that's been part of the conversation for as long as I've been here, in getting these things changed or at least exploring some other ways to do these programs so that we're not just checking the box, right? It used to be we were outcomes based. So if you didn't meet the outcome, you did activities. activities didn't yield results, right?
So, Dan, we talked again, Clifton Strength Finders, right? We've mentioned it a few times. Knowing that that is an integral part of not only the program, but at Box Butte, right? It's an initiative that you are mindful of, and really lean into it. You and Peggy shared again that you couldn't be more different as far as what the results were showing. And I think we actually have a slide that kind of, shows the just how different, but maybe touch on just a little bit of the decisions behind bringing this into the program itself. One of the reasons why that question I think is relevant is for those organizations that do have some type of assessment, strengths, sometimes are looked at as separate initiatives, right? Well-being sits over here. We're trying to get people healthy, and then we're trying to keep people productive. And so understanding, you all have done a phenomenal job of blending those two. So would love to kind of dig in there around how you got to that place and maybe some of the decisions to incorporate it.
Right. When essentially when we were looking at, we knew that something needed to change, and we just looked back to Gallup. What does Gallup, do they have anything? Do they say anything about well-being? Because we do use Clifton Strengths as our foundation. It turns out they have tons of research. They surveyed 98% of the world's population. Peggy's going to talk about how they arrived at the 5 elements, but there is tons of information out there on that. And it's the base, Clifton Strengths to the base, right? Looking at this here, you can see our polar opposites, right? The 34 themes on the left. I'm the open dots, and Peggy's the kind of that black dot there. But you can see my number 1's her 18. My number 2 is her 20. My number 3 is her 31. But I'll give you this example. We're all things culture, and our customer service is no different. And we were looking at revamping that as well. And we were able to get there with my analytical and my strategic, and Peggy's connectedness. We were able to see that alignment that you're talking about and blending those things. So yes, our engagement program is in our well-being program. Our engagement programs in our customer service. Clifton Strengths are the base of all of it. And I think that since we were in it with our engagement, we were able to connect the dots there and really make something that was meaningful and not foreign. So when you have those siloed type initiatives, I think that it's a different language for each one of them, and it's hard to comprehend. But when you have the basis of the Clifton Strengths and all of them, there's common ground. So that's kind of how we arrived at that. I think it's brilliant, but it was by happenstance, right? I mean, we're just evaluating and asking questions constantly about what can we do to make this more meaningful and better for our employees.
Dan, there's an interesting question, or maybe even conversation in kind of that last sentence that you had there. I'm thinking about, again, if there's anyone else that's out there that maybe is trying to figure out how to incorporate, or maybe hesitating on how do these two things work together. I don't know if it's advice that I want you to give, or if it's just like, what are the things that someone could be thinking about to ask, or what should they be looking out for? Help somebody kind of peek around the corner of, man, this information, it all makes sense, but I don't know how to make the connection, or I don't know how to bring this all and tie it together. What kind of recommendations would you give to organizations if they're kind of at that decision point?
Well, first off, measuring things, but measurement alone without action is meaningless, right? So that's what we learned from Gallup. So it's paying attention, asking your people, doing some kind of surveys, getting feedback from them that should guide you, along with objective information, right? So one of the challenges is like, how do we make change to accommodate maybe participation, but keep the intent of the program at the forefront, right? Like, how do we adapt and make it meaningful for individuals with really keeping the purpose and the outcomes of that program at the forefront? One of the examples we use is we have participants that don't like biometric screenings, right? Biometric screenings are a very important part of our program when evaluating the effectiveness of the program. So at the end of the day, biometrics are part of the program, and we don't get rid of them. So it's asking those questions about where do we want to be? Is it happening? Is it not? And then thinking about what are the steps we need to take to really get there.
And if anyone's questioning whether or not you had the analytical as your, I mean,
Number one,
coming strong.
Yeah.
But I mean, totally makes sense, right? And again, is why, to your point, why you're seeing the results that you're seeing. Peggy, I want to kind of switch gears and kind of dig into some of those results a little bit, but starting with like how you get them, and it's part of program design. So we mentioned the Gallup usage of the 5 elements, and how that's an integral part of the program. But there's also some, I don't know if I want to call it uniqueness, but it's Box Butte, the way your program is structured allows for people to re-engage throughout the year. And that's super important, and you're seeing great success there. But maybe touch on first, let's hit on the Gallup 5 elements and how building that into the program has been one of those central components.
Sounds great, Jim. Yes, these are the 5 elements that Gallup has found when they polled 98% of the world's population. That is true, 98% of the world's population. These are the things that we think about when we think about what's most important to our lives. They narrowed it down to these 5 elements. So career, you like what you do every day. Now, that's pretty extreme language in Dan's words. It's not that you don't have bad days. It's not that you don't want to develop and progress in your career, but basically you like what you do every day means you are using your strengths every day. So we want to make sure that is what is happening in career. And then social, you have meaningful friendships in your life. Dan and I, as you saw, are opposites. So what is meaningful to him is different than what's meaningful to me. The most important question is, do you have the people that you need in your life? And do you have them in the amount of time that is best to fill your cup? Financial, you manage your money well. Money is a tool just like a paintbrush. So we can dip a paintbrush in and sling it all over the place and make a mess, and it takes a lot to clean that up. Or we can dip a paintbrush in and apply it exactly where we want it to be so that we can have the results that we want. And we talk a lot about encouraging investing in experiences and not things, which is part of financial well-being. Physical, you have the energy to get things done. Now, we follow the lifestyle medicine model with our doctors in the well-being program, and that does include all the things that give you energy or take energy away. And one of those elements, of course, we think of our body weight and our diet and exercise, but also mental well-being and emotional well-being is a big part of our program, making sure that we have those resources available and that people know how to get in contact when they need emotional and mental support. Community, you like where you live. That connection to community is so valuable. It could be family, it could be sports teams, it could be recreation, but just finding out what ties you to that community. All 5 of those elements add up to thriving well-being. Gallup has found, and we also have found, and you'll see when you get to see some of our statistics.
Iggy, can you maybe touch on how these 5 elements show up in the employee's experience at Box Butte? Because again, it's one thing, right, to have things up on the wall or have murals that have the fancy words, but again, living it, breathing it, right? So again, it's what we gathered just from our short time together of the conversation leading up to this was that leadership is bought into this, right? But again, how does it show up to the employee experience? Maybe touch on that just within the program or at Box Butte in general, how you guys are accomplishing that.
So each one of those elements has a different, maybe it's a scale in each individual's life. Maybe some individuals are really focusing on career, so their social and community might take a few steps back and be in a maintenance area, what's working for me, I'm just going to continue doing that. Behavior modification is growing more, taking individual steps intentionally. So it would feel like it is a huge project to set goals, big goals in all 5 of those areas. So in their coaching sessions, we talk about, which one of those areas is your focus area for the next 3 months? And let's really drill down on leaning into your strengths as you were taking those steps in one of those areas or a couple of those areas. And then also recognizing, okay, maybe social is really good for me right now. I'm just going to continue. And then also recognizing, okay, which one of my strengths helps me with that? And just maintaining that, keeping going with those maybe larger goals and minor goals or maintenance goals.
I love that. And I think going back to, like I mentioned in the introduction, I think what's been awesome understanding the Peggy effect is just your ability to help people probably simplify what can be overwhelming, right? Again, taking the first step, right, is sometimes the hardest, but helping encourage that along the way. Let's talk a little bit about, again, a quarterly type program is something that you all have invested in. Not everyone runs a quarterly program, right? But again, back to some of the statistics you've seen and the re-engagement and engagement throughout the year does speak very highly to the way that you've developed your program, the program structure. So I'd love to talk about that a little bit of just how you're able to achieve that, what went into it from the mindset of how you were going to build it out. It would be awesome to help take people through here.
Okay, thank you. So on the blue side of your screen, you can see we start with the biometric screening. We start with the well-being numbers survey, which it's like a gas gauge. We'll give you some more details about that a little bit later. That well-being number assessment changes through each quarter, and so it's really fun for individuals to get to see what their action steps are actually doing in regards to their miles per gallon. The initial coaching session is something that happens in that first quarter with every participant. They meet with me and we go through all 5 areas and decide, is this a modification area or is this a maintenance area, and create an action plan for them. And that usually gets people almost always gets people on, excited, ready to dive in, but life happens. And so it designed in our program is a quarterly progress check. So as we go through every 3 months, I get to meet with each one of those individuals again. And we get to go over what their goals were, what their behaviors, it's basically behaviors that are leading to the goal that we focus on. How are you doing? How are you doing with this behavior? Does it need to be edited? And we calculate I call it a percentage of follow through. And that is part of this program, is just checking in, seeing how you're doing, getting back on track, and editing your track. And then you also, in the second quarter, get to celebrate with another incentive for that completion of those behaviors. Same thing with quarter 3 and same thing with quarter 4. So I meet with every individual 4 times in a year. And it is incredible to watch what people are doing. My job as a coach is to show people what they are capable of. And actually, I just get to show them what they have done, and they get to see what they are capable of. Then our incentive program is on the green side of the screen. So just to sign up to get the biometric screening, to do the number survey, and to get that initial coaching session with that initial action plan, they are incentivized $100 to complete all of those. So in the first quarter, you get $100 at the end of January, February, March, right? Then for every progress check, as we go through each quarter every year, the incentive is $25 to show up. By the way, they do this while they are on the clock. So they get paid to get paid, to get incentivized, which I think is a brilliant idea. I'm kind of popular, not because of what we do together, but because they get paid to come and see me. Then we do behavior modification. So those are an average of all of those modification areas that they've decided to take action steps in. For example, if I decided I wanted to walk 10,000 steps a day for 3 days in a week, and I only completed about half of that, I would get $75 in that modification. But we average those modifications together. So it is very encouraging. If there's one that isn't in the 90 to 100% follow through, there's another one that helps average that out. So it's encouraging that way. And then, of course, the maintenance, those are the good habits they already had. We want to celebrate those too. So that's $25 per quarter, quarter 2, quarter 3, and quarter 4. So our total yearly incentive is $700 potentially that they is available for them to achieve.
Dan or Peggy, or a combination. So the $700 incentive, a very common question that we get from groups that are either launching, building, or deciding to step into a well-being program that want to offer an incentive is, how much is relevant enough? How much should we budget? What makes sense? What were the conversations that helped Box Butte get to the 700? Maybe just talk through a little bit about the decision making behind that.
Yeah. So that's evolution too. Our incentives used to be related to health insurance premiums. We were self-funded, and then we did have some claims that just boosted us up to where some of that cost had to come back on employees. So there was restructuring, number one. What happened at the time is that we just got together and decided how much money, how much value were employees actually getting by us incentivizing that way. So at that time it was $750, and that was incentive. So if you met the outcomes for the program, we were giving you $750 at the end of the year. If you didn't meet that requirement, you checked the boxes. Again, I'm going to say that there was value in the program. I hate saying check the boxes so much, but it really was that kind of structure. And then when we moved to this model, we had additional expenses. So we hired Peggy as a well-being coach. We have a provider in the lifestyle medicine clinic that's spending time seeing our well-being participants. So there was some expenses there, and we did reduce the incentive from $750 per participant to $700. So that's how we got there. There was no magic number. We never did pull out a number out of the sky. It was all kind of evaluative, just like the program structure is to this point. We were looking at stuff, what makes sense, what's valuable to people, and then we just moved on. So it was just constantly looking at where we're at.
And Dan, you mentioned, again, feedback, right? So one of the conversations we had was, how do you engage your employees to participate in the evolution of the program, make sure that you're understanding what people's needs are, how to incorporate that into program design and structure. You mentioned a couple of the annual well-being surveys that are done. Maybe, again, talk to the audience a little bit about how do you engage the employee population through survey listening mechanisms, and then what are you doing with that, Mr. Analytics?
Yeah, we're not doing nothing with it, that's for sure. So we do have an engagement program. Like I said before, meshing all things is what we're trying to do here so that it's just not another thing. So previously, to changing kind of the format of our wellbeing program, we did engagement surveys through Gallup. They come out one time per year in September. We give people 2 weeks to do that. And the good thing is that Gallup also had well-being surveys, right? So we just following the methodology. We implement that at the same time. The thing about engagement surveys is they go to 100% of your population. So we paired it with that so that we're getting feedback from people that don't participate in the program as well. And then we use that information with teams, individuals, with our executive team, just constantly evaluating that. With the well-being program, we're measuring individual well-being, so how they perceive their well-being. And then we're also measuring culture, right? So how well does BBGH actually help you improve your well-being when it comes to the 5 elements? So there's questions that ask that. And then we measure outlook as well. So what is our employees' outlook on the next 5 years? And really, that's probably the best indicator when it comes to overall well-being, thriving, right? Is what is their outlook? So we use that every year to decide, okay, are we getting enough survey? Are we getting enough feedback to make a change, or are we still good? Really, it's kind of it's the same gas gauge as Peggy's talking about with the well-being numbers survey. It's just organizationally and aggregate.
So Peggy, flip to you again. Speaking of assessing what's working, one thing we know is working is your initial coaching sessions. Again, back to, I think the stat was having 100% completion rate. Again, anything at 100%, I feel like is a good thing. So let's dig into that just a little bit. Here's the great question. How are you achieving 100% completion rate on getting people to show up for these individual coaching sessions? We need to know the secret sauce of the Peggy effect.
Well, a lot of it has to do with the people. But I consider my job a customer service job. I communicate through emails. I also through our internal messaging system just to remind people this is coming up. I try to meet them where they are. I travel to their departments just because it takes less time for them. And we have meeting rooms scattered about the hospital that make it really easy for me to get closer to them to have their coaching session. I come in for night shift because it wouldn't be well in their being if I woke them up in the middle of their sleep time for them to come to a well-being appointment. So I'm willing to do that. I come in early for those coming off shift or stay late in the evening, or at one time every quarter I do schedule myself for it's a noon to midnight. It's not necessarily night shift. I'm not yeah. I don't need a badge for that. It's just amazing though to meet people where they are, and they actually learn to know that they are worth it. They are worth investing in. And I hope they pick that up and invest in themselves that way. One of the things that has made it very easy for us is using the Navigate platform. So that's pretty complicated incentive structure that we had on that previous slide. Navigate takes care of all of that for us. And so when I finish a coaching session, I give each individual a worksheet that shows what they have qualified for in their incentive structure. It's a screenshot of Navigate, and I show them which buttons they go in and push, and then Navigate makes it so easy for me to go in and approve those. So I do appreciate. We couldn't do this program honestly without Navigate. So kudos to that. Did that answer your question?
I appreciate it. Thank you for the shameless plug. We'll take it. Love it. But no, in all seriousness, I think, again, even in our prep sessions, what I think all of us in this space can really resonate with is oftentimes people's journey, right? They are personal, they are different, but at the end of the day, we are still human beings that are just looking for somebody to invest time, to be able to have that safe place that says, yeah, there are things that I'm needing to work on, but having a coach or an advocate versus somebody that's always identifying the bad things, right? But working on the positive side. So again, the proof points of that is how you show up, and making those things happen. You touched a little bit about kind of like the worksheet, but differently on, establishing those goals and helping somebody through that journey. There's also the worksheet that I think, Kins, if you want to jump to that next slide, this is another great place to maybe just talk about, Peggy, your influence and your ability to walk somebody through, but also there's an accountability side of this journey that can't go unspoken or unsaid. But talk a little bit about what you're seeing as far as the success, the utilization of this, and maybe a little bit of the tactical of how you get this done.
Yes, this is a fantastic activity for anybody that's watching this webinar. If you want to start with a well-being program, start here. Helping people figure out in each one of these elements of well-being where they are now, where they want to be in a future state, and then identifying what's missing in between, because that's where the action comes from. We take that gap and turn it into tiny habits or mini steps that take them in the direction of their future state. Now, for me, my future state for each one of these areas is a different span of time. So for career, my future state is 1 quarter at a time, 3 months at a time. For me, socially, right now, my social is 1 week at a time. Keeping in touch with my kids, my grandkids, my nieces and nephews. Financially, for me, at this time in my life, it's 1, 3, 5, and 7 years. Physical, right now, it's 1 month at a time. So what am I doing? Where am I going to be in 1 month's time from today when I do this goal brainstorming worksheet? And then community for me, it is at least once a year, but then the hospital quarterly does a community service project, and I'm part of that too. So this proves that my action plan is different than anybody else's. And that is that when we first started this 5 years ago, I think a lot of people were hesitant that I was going to tell them what they needed to do, and that through this activity proves that no, I believe everybody has their own answers. I just need to ask the right questions. And this is a great assistance in helping them find their own answers.
Love that. Ask the right questions. Speaking of questions, another one that I have, Dan, let's kind of tap into the analytical brain again. Impact. You mentioned at the very beginning, right? Program just doesn't happen, and it isn't sustainable if it's not providing value. So as we think about the program that Box Butte is currently operating and just overall the well-being space, oftentimes the questions that are being asked at, decision-making level, CFO, what value do we get? Which oftentimes comes with, we have to define what success is, right? What is this program doing? What's it helping us achieve? Talk to us a little bit about what success looks like at Box Butte and what you are analyzing to help understand the performance of whether or not the program's achieving that.
Sure. Yeah, I think for a lot of us, success can be one really good indicator of success is going to be obviously participation, right? Our goal originally set out was about 75%. Currently, we're at 81%. So that's good. That's a good indicator, because if there is a change, we can make it in that program and we have a large following, right? So when you think about cultural initiatives and things like that, participation is always a good one to look at. So we're always looking at that. Also, our baseline scores. So like we have those assessments where every quarter they're filling out that assessment, right? We have an algorithm, it gives them a score, tells them how many miles per gallon are you getting. For participants in their first year from their baseline score, career well-being has gone up by 11.8%, social by 8.4%, financial by 18%, which is huge. Physical well-being by 15.7%, and community well-being by 8.3%. So those are good numbers to look at, although they can be viewed as subjective. I think it's important to look at objective information too. So when it comes to our biometric scores, all our high-risk areas, when it comes to glucose, total cholesterol, LDL, HDL, triglycerides, are all less than 10%. So the amount of high-risk employees that we have within the program is very low, which is good, right? So we think about population health, kind of mitigating those risks when it comes to healthcare costs. These numbers are the best that I've ever seen in 15 years here. So obviously, getting in front of a provider, going over those biometric results, setting up some kind of follow-up if you need to with your PCP, getting a preventative screening done. There is value in seeing a provider because people perceive them as truth tellers, right? Like what a doctor says is truth. So I think that has had a huge impact in the program. But also, as you mentioned too, with program design, the engagement on the platform, 70% compared to your book of business, I think is a key indicator too. But what it really tells me, for our affirmation and within the program, is that the way that we have that program structured quarterly is working well.
Absolutely. So again, proof points, right? You've got data, both subjective, objective, which then kind of teases us right into that budget conversation, right? Which I think from not everyone is in the same situation of having leadership that maybe is bought in, advocates and strong proponents of well-being. That is not the case at Box Butte. You definitely have leadership buy-in, but still the conversation has to be justified. So again, would love to know, maybe take us into those budget conversation rooms. Like, are they war rooms, or are they like, no, everyone's on the same page? How does that data play into the decision making, and what those conversations look like, and maybe what you're being asked to provide as far as the proof points?
Yeah, so I think sometimes this becomes a war, as you mentioned, is because maybe it's new when budget time comes, right? So like, oh, we need money, now let's go ask for it. One of the things that we've done in setting up with this new structure that we're doing currently is we created a well-being core team, the well-being core team, and that involved executives. And we created a platform where we met at that point every other week, and the only topic we discussed was well-being. And I think that is important and continues to be important, because we don't have to worry about all the other problems that are happening within the organization. We have one focus during that hour, and it's all well-being. So we are continuously sharing the data as it's coming in with that team, the impacts that we're having. We have a standing agenda. And really, so when we get to budget, and I had to go talk to my CFO before we had this call, so I felt comfortable saying it, but we don't have to have that conversation. We're going to get that money to support the program because they already know what the impact is, because they're constantly having conversations about it. So that's one thing that we do. And just the amount of surveys, they also understand that well-being, they know Gallup's research too. So well-being leads to engagement, and engagement leads to productivity and profitability. So when you think about hospitals and these hardships and things like that we've talked about, that's what we want. We want productivity and profitability. How do we get there? Well, Gallup says, follow the recipe. Well-being equals engagement. Engagement equals productivity and profitability. So that's how we get there.
Yeah. Dan, something super interesting that you mentioned there that could be a nugget or takeaway for a lot of folks on the webinar today is when thinking about building a well-being committee or well-being champions, not oftentimes are the C-suite or executives kind of thought as being invited to that table. Usually it's focused on employees, right? People that are closer to the day-to-day activities, getting that voice and feeling of the employee population. Think an interesting nugget, right? Of like maybe helping achieve and see the vision and also the throughput, the efforts and also the results. Having that buy-in from that level. If you're struggling with either executive buy-in or leadership support, that might be a way to re-engage folks in your organization. Add them, include them, bring them apart and alongside the conversation. Super good nugget there, which I think as we're getting near time here, let's flip the script to kind of lessons learned, right? So again, there's 30 years, Dan, you said 15, we've got the Peggy effect. So let's talk about what are some of the nuggets that you've learned over your time spent, both from the good and bad, right? The trial and errors of trying to figure this out. What would be some tips or advice for organizations that, again, we run the spectrum, people that are just starting their well-being journey or that have had the 30-year programs, piece of advice that you would give people that are trying to improve their well-being within their organization? Dan, I'll tip it to you first.
Well, I think focusing on what's meaningful to your people. As we talked about in preparation for this, I don't think that you can't go do Box Butte General Hospital's program at like Wesco, which is it's another company here in town. So you need to know and understand what your people want or need or what's meaningful to them. So again, back to my analytical, finding out, asking, and then using information to move you forward. But I also think that keeping the program in sight and in front of your people is important. So, we keep on going back to this quarterly structure, and I'm not saying it's the best structure, but it's the best one I've been a part of in terms of engagement and moving things forward. There's nothing new about it. The 5 elements of well-being are new to every single person that comes in these doors. And the only way to remember what those are and focus on it is to have those conversations, right? So keeping everything at the upfront, whether that's onboarding, which ours is, weekly, monthly, quarterly communications, which we do all the time. So I think those 2 things are really important. Peggy, I think you have one that's related to our vision as well that's really good.
Thank you, Dan. And this is a running joke between Dan and I. He said weekly, monthly, quarterly communications and celebrations. I'm the celebrator.
Peggy's a celebrator.
We have a program where coworkers nominate each other for the career well-being champion. I think it's every other month that we do that. Anyway, that recognition is, and Gallup teaches us that, is how to engage employees. I would also like to mention that if you're interested, anybody who's watching this is something that we have done in this well-being program. We tie it together with our other benefits. Our EAP program is connected on Navigate. It's one stop where we can find links for all of the resources that our employees and our participants need. Our EAP, our retirement, which is also part of our financial well-being, that has changed since I started here. And we took our new company to Navigate. They got us linked up so that individuals can just follow the links on Navigate to get to some financial goals or some financial steps that they need. Our goal here at BBGH is to be the greatest place to work, to receive care, and to practice medicine. That is an iteration of our values or our vision statement. It actually is to be the greatest place to receive care, to work, and to practice medicine. But our current CEO right now agrees with me and gives me permission to reword that. I think it must be the best place to work first before it can be the best place to receive care and to practice medicine. So that's my mini goal, and that's what I keep in front of the participants. We want this to be the greatest place to work.
Peggy, I think the participants would agree, right? And one of the questions that we asked in prep was just, was there a piece of feedback or a story that kind of really affirmed that the program was working? And you shared some of the quotes with us. Anything to dig in here or share in addition to? I mean, again, these are spoken from the people that live and breathe within the program. And again, it's a testament to what you and Dan and the others at Box Butte have been able to achieve.
I do appreciate the individual that is on my left. This person also realizes how all of the benefits of being an employee at Box Butte General Hospital are connected. There's my connectedness in this well-being program. All of these options really benefit the program itself and the outcomes of the employees utilizing these services. But the next one is really touching to me. The well-being program is more than a tracker or a plan online, although it does include both of those things. It's an entire team of supportive staff to help you reach your goals in all areas of your life. And those are the 5 elements: career, social, financial, physical, and community. It makes me so proud to see that a participant knows exactly what those 5 elements are. They've spent time on themselves. It's a supportive and non-critical team that has your best in mind. I feel cheered on in my endeavors. So again, my job of being showing people what they are capable of, it's a privilege, and it is awe-inspiring to watch and see what people have done with this well-being program for themselves and their families.
So true. So true. Well, listen, Dan, Peggy, thank you. Thank you for being willing to share your story. You all are doing a tremendous effort as far as it relates into the employee's journey through well-being, and don't ever underestimate the power that you have in that influence. So again, thank you for what you do every day. But with that, again, big thank you to our friends at Box Butte. Thank you for everyone joining, and we will see you next time.